else would kind of please mute yourselves here. And Barbara, you.
There's the bell. I just wanted to welcome all of you. You're entering the zone of the Rotary E-Club of World Peace, where we are all active peacemakers, and each of us carry peace in our heart and on our pin. I was going to invite all of you to wear your peace pin because you are a member of the peace community. Peace is what is bringing us together, and we're all shouting the values that everyone counts. And I'm going to start tonight. I am so honored that I'm president today, and this is a day that will go down in history. We will remember this day. This is the day when the right thing was done, and it respected the rights of all. And that's what I really believe, that together we must be united and make that happen. When I was married to Robert, we went to Hungary and we created an agenda. Robert Mueller was my husband, who was the Assistant Secretary General. And we went to Budapest and we wrote something. And this is what we wrote: see the world with global eyes, love the world with a global heart, and understand the world with the global mind. What does that really mean? It means to make this planet peaceful for all, and to eradicate from all of the miseries, the poverty, errors, and all the things that make us sad. That's really English right there. And then finally, to attain a life of fulfillment, happiness for all humans, to remember that everybody counts, every life is important. And the rule of law is what happened today. And I remember Ben Ferencz saying, it's the rule of law that will keep us together. And so with that, I bring you Rudy, who will invite you all to join us tonight. And I thank you all for joining the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. And I'm Barbara Gahn Mueller, and so delighted you're here. Thank you.
No, thanks, Barbara. That was a nice message. And certainly we've all been watching what's happening. And again, we're one humanity, and right will overcome at the end of the day. And respect for each other and respect for each other's rights. And this is a historic day that we will remember and continue to build on. So, and we'll move forward from there. Dee, good to see you tonight.
Thank you.
Karen's on the other side of the lake over here, or the other side of her office. Carol, good to see you tonight. David Wick, we've spoken probably 6 times today already. And Marilyn, good to see you as well. And Emmanuel, the future president of France here. Keep fighting out there, young man. Michael Corbin, good to see you tonight. And Sala, things are staying calm in your area of Seattle, and or we hope so anyways. Jack, good to see you tonight, and Jack will be introducing our speaker for this evening. Tony, great to see you tonight. Nice picture over your shoulder there. And Mark, you keeping Hawaii safe and sound over there? Good stuff. And Peggy, you probably don't have any snow up there, right?
Not today.
Not today. Dee said he had snow, so we'll let him have the snow. Tim, how are you tonight? Peaceful? That's good. Arthur is keeping the peace there. David Fishman.
Yeah, we have extra big news because Extra TV ran an interview with Martin Sheen and myself over the weekend, and we've been pouring in with interest and requests on that. So I put the link in the box if anybody wants to watch the replay of that and see our film on public television, now on 65 stations.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Arthur. Good job. Good stuff. David Fishman, good to see you tonight. And
thank you, Rudy. Good evening.
And working with us with our inter-country committees, and certainly with our Rotary clubs that we've been meeting with over in Russia. So great to have you on board with us tonight. Barbara, good to see you. Laxon and Mark, keeping peace
shalom
in the Middle
Shalom
East.
from Israel.
And
I just
shalom.
want to have a shout out to the board. Thank you for supporting Partners for Peace, which is a support group affiliated with the National Peace Corps Association. to support the Rotary Peace Corps partnership. Thank you
No.
for supporting that yesterday at the board meeting.
No, thank you and Chantel. We will continue to support
Right.
that. So that's
She
great.
did a great job, right?
No, thank you for doing that. And also your grant that you both working on in the Vision Center. So I'm glad that got approved. So that's great. Great news.
Thank you.
Denise, good to see you. And Anya, are you going to be on our next Russian call? We need you to do some interpretation for us. You're muted there, so.
Could you unmute her, Ruth?
Yeah, she has to unmute herself. That's all good. We'll have you on for the next meeting. Manzoor is a past district governor here in our district 5330, and he's happened to drop in. He thought he was actually attending a district training assembly meeting tonight, and instead he's part of our group tonight. So welcome aboard with us. Dennis, good to see you. Like we see you every day here. So keep the peace, my friend.
I just one of the things, Rudy, I just posted our club's declaration on
perfect.
social
Yeah.
justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
No, that's great. Yeah, thank you. And we'll be sharing that with the district and the clubs in the district as well. And it's up on our website. Julie, good to see you. Your dad beat you to the meeting tonight, as you would expect. So that's all good. Brian is keeping the city of peace with his wife up there in Ojai. Good job there. Richard, keep working on eliminating nuclear weapons. Lisa,
Peaceful policing.
yeah, peaceful policing, and I probably had a good move today that actually supported your efforts out there, and anything we can do to support you, we're here for you. That's good stuff. Terry, she's trying to move to for some reason to Georgia, but it's all good. It's all good. Bill, good to see you tonight. Sharon, great to see you. Super there. Peter, everything's going well with you. Martin, we don't see you, but can we hear you?
Yep.
There you are.
I'm here with y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you. Kanadi, how are you tonight?
I am doing well, thank you. It's cold up in Colorado.
Oh, cold in Colorado. And we've just got a brand new member that joined us from Denver. And he's not on tonight, but we'll be visiting more with him. And we're at our club has been doing some phenomenal growth this year. We've gone from 56 members at 79, and we're about to go to 80 for this current year. And on the foundation giving side, we've exceeded our goal for our annual fund giving, and we're very close to matching our goal for Polio Plus donations. And Peggy, did you have anything to say about I sent a note out today about the concert coming up on the Peace Concert from Africa.
Yes, I just posted the link, but there are a lot of people are having trouble getting on. So just go online, give to the Rotary Peace Centers, and then email me and I will get you the link. And it is being recorded, so you don't have to get up at 3 a.m. to listen to it. And thank you for supporting it if you possibly can. They're really working hard. And as Rudy said, our total contributions are within $80 of hitting $5,000 for the year, which is blowing our previous number out of the water by $1,000. So anybody who's sitting on the fence, now's the time to do it. And as Rudy said, we're within $100 of hitting our polio goal, and we've exceeded our annual fund contribution. So this is a generous club, and thank you, everybody.
No, thank you, Peggy, for leading the way here for us. And certainly with the Peace Centers and this Peace Concert in Africa supports the new Peace Center in Uganda. And so we appreciate being on there. And you can get up, I think it's 8 a.m. Pacific time. You can dance and hear the music and sing along and get your day kicked off and inspired and for that. And it's in memory of a gentleman who was going to be our Rotary National President who passed away in that area. And so welcome that. And also we know that the Rotary National Convention this year is online, virtual, the Taiwan Convention. The registration is open. I sent you an email today to go ahead and register for that. And you see David Fishman on here, but there's a pre-convention of inter-country committees peace conference. And Fergal sent me information on that I forwarded on to each of you. So please join in on that. The early registration for the convention is $49, and for the pre-convention conference is another $20. And it's very important right now in creating peace in the world and the work that's being done out there. And so I thank everybody for joining us tonight. And we are an outstanding club, and you're all part of our humanitarian family here globally, and certainly appreciate everybody here. Jack, would you please introduce our speaker for this evening?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do so, Rudy. Thank you. So it's my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. David Cortright. David's the director of the Global Policy Initiative. He's a special advisor for policy studies and professor emeritus of practice at the University of Notre Dame's Kroc School of Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution. When I went to research schools in peace studies and conflict resolution, the Kroc School at Notre Dame came up as the top school of its kind in the world on multiple ranking sites in that. As you'll hear in a second, David's research and interests correspond very closely to each of yours individually and our groups collectively. David has written widely about nonviolent social change, nuclear disarmament, and the use of multilateral sanctions and incentives as tools of international peacemaking. He's provided research services to the foreign ministries of Canada, Denmark, Germany, Japan, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Switzerland, and has served as a consultant or advisor to agencies of the United Nations, the Carnegie Commission on Prevention of Deadly Conflict, the International Peace Academy, and the John and D. Catherine MacArthur Foundation. He has a long history of public advocacy for disarmament and prevention of war. As an active duty soldier during the Vietnam War, he spoke against that conflict. In 1978, he was named executive director of SANE, the Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy, which under his leadership grew from 4,000 to 150,000 members and became the largest disarmament organization in the United States. He's actively involved in the nuclear freeze movement of the 80s, and in November 2002, he helped create Win Without War, a coalition of national organizations that oppose the invasion of Iraq and works for demilitarized national security strategies. After graduating with a BA in history from the University of Notre Dame, Dr. Cortright earned an MA degree in history from NYU. He completed his doctoral studies in political science at the Union Institute in residence at the Institute for Public Studies in Washington, D.C. So with that, I introduce you to David Cortright. So David, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Jack and Rudy and all of you. It's wonderful to be with Rotary. I have had always great admiration for Rotary International. Your peace witness, your peace programs are truly significant on a global scale, especially your support for peace education programs, some at the Kroc Institute, but I know also at Uppsala University in Sweden. And a number of the programs that I've managed, we've hired Rotary graduates, master's students who got their education through a Rotary scholarship, and they are among the leading peacemakers in the world. So you're seeding the field, if you will, helping to educate and inspire young peace builders all around the world. And great credit to you, and I salute you for that. I appreciate this invitation. I must say I'm not used to speaking this late at night. It's 9:30 here in South Bend. Someone talked about snow earlier. We had snow today, and it's not much of a springtime day here. But normally my thinking is sharpest in the morning, and normally about 9:30 or so, my brain is switching off. So if I lose the train of thought here, you'll know why. But hopefully we can stay on track. And what I'd like to do is just share a few observations about some of the big foreign policy issues of war and peace, as I see it on the agenda for the United States and the world. But then open it up for questions. I'd love to get your comments, your questions, and try to make this more of a conversation than a lecture. I want to start by talking about two big issues that are in the headlines much these days. One is the possibility of ending the war in Afghanistan. The withdrawal of American troops is impending, and what that means, and some perspectives on that. And then I also want to talk about nuclear weapons issues for today. Where are the negotiations with Iran, and what is the situation with the nuclear danger and US nuclear policy? Starting with Afghanistan and the policy so far of the new administration in Washington, I must say I'm generally encouraged. I think they've taken some positive steps. And one of those was the president's decision just the other day that, yes, we are going to finally withdraw American combat troops from Afghanistan, September 11, 20 years after the attack on the United States, and almost 20 years from when they first went in. I think it's a great decision, long overdue. And what's interesting, I think, is that the administration is doing this in a relatively smart way. They've combined the idea of withdrawing our troops with a significant diplomatic initiative. I'm calling it the Blinken-Biden initiative, Secretary of State Blinken and President Biden. And it's a proposal that has several key ingredients that are very much in line with peace research about what works in peace processes. Some of you may know at the Kroc Institute, we have the world's largest database on the implementation of peace agreements, the Peace Accords Matrix. And our data there shows us that successful peace agreements are characterized by several factors. One, that there needs to be a power sharing agreement. There's almost always some sort of transitional authority where the insurgent forces and the government negotiate and come up with a new arrangement that's a transition to a political process and hopefully a more stable society and end to the internal wars. And that's exactly what Biden and Blinken are proposing, that there be a power sharing arrangement between the Afghan government and the Taliban as a transitional authority, and they will then work out the mechanics for creating a new government. And secondly, the other key factor that we found in our research is the need for international support, especially an international mission that's led under the authority of the United Nations. And here again, this is an important feature of the administration's plan. And as you know, they've proposed a conference to be convened, it's supposed to have started this month in Turkey. And there's been a new UN envoy appointed for this. So all of that, I think, is generally moving in the right direction. Now, these things don't work according to script. And so what the administration proposed about 6-7 weeks ago in its peace plan is already looking a little ragged around the edges. Neither the Afghan government nor the Taliban have said full square that they're really behind this plan. The Taliban has not said yes, that it will participate in the UN conference. And there was just news a day or so ago that they've postponed the UN conference. Well, partly it's because Ramadan is the holy season in the Islamic world, but that's really just an excuse. It's going to take more time to convince the two sides to come together. The Afghan government itself is very weak. It's very unpopular, tremendously corrupt, really in a weakening condition. The Taliban has been getting stronger. And unfortunately, the Taliban seem to feel like they're winning and they don't have to negotiate. But I think the administration has put a good offer on the table, and I'm hopeful that they will eventually agree to some sort of a negotiation. We know from past records that peace processes are never a straight line. They certainly don't move fast. The Colombia peace agreement, which I was involved in a process of monitoring that agreement for the last 4 years. The Colombia peace process took 4 years to negotiate. So in the Afghan case, hopefully it won't be that long, but it's likely to take quite a while. The other smart thing the US has done is to make a commitment and to work with other donor states, especially the European states and the Japanese, to pledge to maintain significant development and humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. And while the war, in my opinion, has been mistaken and has caused tremendous suffering and destruction and unnecessary, the development assistance and humanitarian aid that the United States has given to Afghanistan has been decisive in helping to improve conditions for many communities, especially the women of Afghanistan. And I think if that aid can be continued under a new power sharing arrangement with the Taliban now playing a role in government, that could make a big difference in helping to retain some of the minimal gains that have been achieved for human rights and for women in Afghanistan. Now, I saw the administration claim that this process means now that the so-called forever war is coming to an end. Would that was the case, but it's not really the case. The forever war is going on. As you know, the United States has military operations and bombings that are going on in at least 6 or 7 countries around the world. We don't even really know. It's not very public. With small operational teams that are engaged in combat, and of course, pretty extensive bombing and drone strikes in a number of countries. That policy, I think, is immoral, unjust, it's ineffective, and it always risks increasing the likelihood of American troops becoming bogged down. We have troops, for example, back in Iraq on that basis today. So the forever war needs to end, and one of the vehicles for that will be to try to repeal the congressional authorization dating back to 2002, the so-called authorization for a military force, the AUMF. There is effort underway in Congress to try to repeal that blanket authorization that has allowed the US to carry on these military campaigns, and in some cases like Afghanistan and Iraq, full-scale wars. But the direction is positive, I think, and personally, I think the administration has done the right thing in announcing and finally beginning to move towards withdrawing American combat troops and ending the American role in the war in Afghanistan. There's lots you can talk about that, so I'll appreciate your questions on that. Another topic I want to talk about is nuclear weapons. As Jack mentioned in the intro, I've spent much of my life working on nuclear disarmament issues, as many of you have. And here again, the administration has taken some initial positive steps. Most important was the quick agreement right after the administration took office to extend the New START treaty that we've had with Russia, which places limits on strategic nuclear weapons of each side. And more importantly, the New START treaty allows for the continuation of on-site extensive verification measures. So because of that agreement, and this is a process that was negotiated back in the Reagan and first Bush administrations in the strategic arms reduction talks, where it was agreed that each side would allow the other to come with on-site verification of their nuclear weapons to provide a degree of confidence and assurance for security in the nuclear age. So that's been renewed, and that's a positive sign. And the administration did agree to re-engage on the question of the Iran nuclear deal. Now, I know many of us were advocating for the JCPOA, Joint can't even remember all the letters now, combined agreement for a joint program of action between Iran and a coalition that included the US, the European Union, Russia, the United Nations. And that, of course, that agreement signed during the Obama administration was a significant advance in restraining Iran's nuclear program, eliminated much of their highly enriched nuclear materials, shut down their plutonium production reactors, and significantly reduced their nuclear potential. A real success. And it also provided for the most extensive and detailed, rigorous on-site inspections by the United Nations of Iran's nuclear program. President Trump just completely withdrew from the agreement and undermined security in so doing. But now the Biden administration is back at the negotiating table. It's taking some time. The direct negotiations are between the Iranians and the Europeans, and the US is in another hotel, and they're doing these back channel discussions. It's going back and forth, but there does seem to be progress. It's slow. I mean, I put in my notes, let's get on with it. Just sign the deal. Lift all of our sanctions. And then Iran said it will go back to all the terms of the previous agreement. So that's an important process. We have to keep our eye on it, and hopefully it will be successful. And there are some lessons from the Iran nuclear agreement that could be applied to the nuclear problems in North Korea. And a couple of them that I'll highlight. One is that the Iran deal was built on a commitment by the United States and other countries to lift sanctions in exchange for Iran's compliance with denuclearization. Iran signed the agreement. The Obama administration did lift US sanctions. The United Nations Security Council lifted those sanctions, and the UN inspections went back in, and we were able to achieve significant progress. So it tells me that diplomacy can work, and one of the tools of diplomacy is to lift sanctions and to offer relief and opening of trade and commerce that Iran did enjoy for a couple of years there after the lifting of the sanctions. The other ingredient for success in Iran was a multilateral process. As I mentioned, it's not just the US, but also the EU, the Russians, the United Nations. And that multilateral format is what's now being invoked to renew the agreement. If it was just between the US and Iran, it would be difficult because of the animosities and the harsh sentiments that have been historically between our government and the Islamic Republic in Iran. But with the Europeans as intermediaries, we have a channel for communication. And as I say, it looks like it might be achieving some progress. So I think those are some significant advances on the nuclear front. I do worry, however, that on the overall issue of strategic nuclear weapons, the administration has not made any progress. And in fact, they are moving ahead with programs to renew and rebuild and build new nuclear weapons. You may have seen in the news recently the administration's new budget for the year 2022. And that budget increases an already bloated military budget by a small percentage, but it's up to $750 billion. And within that military budget is significant funding for new nuclear weapons programs and the rebuilding of nuclear weapons. Most dangerous, I think, is the rebuilding of the so-called land-based deterrent. All of the US ICBMs out in the Montana and Missouri and other states where the nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles are based, all of those systems are being rebuilt at a cost of $100 billion. The euphemism that they use in Washington is modernization, right? Sounds very appealing. Who wouldn't want to have a modernization program? But it's actually a rebuilding and an upgrading of capacity. And they're going to be building, as I say, 600 new intercontinental ballistic missiles that will allow the United States to be more accurate and more effective in delivering nuclear weapons across the globe. Extremely dangerous, completely insane. If I can go back to the organization SANE that I used to be the head of, there's too much insanity right now in the nuclear program. And there are other parts of the military budget that are dangerous. They're developing a whole new class of nuclear weapons and other forms of weapons, so-called long-distance standoff weapons that can fire across thousands of miles using cruise missile technology. And with that will come new sea-based and air-based long-range strategic cruise missiles that cannot be detected. It doesn't matter how many air defense systems the Russians or anyone else puts up. Mostly those missiles can get through. And of course, once we develop it, then the Russians will do the same and the Chinese, and there'll be another dangerous cycle of the nuclear arms race. So the military budget is a serious problem, and the nuclear establishment in Washington remains in significant power and is driving some very dangerous programs that we need to keep our eye on and work with a lot of groups like Win Without War and with the Friends Committee on National Legislation and other groups to continue to lobby and get our members of Congress to urge a reduction of our nuclear programs. I think everyone would agree. The last thing our country and the world needs right now is more nuclear weapons and whole new classes of nuclear weapons. But there's this insanity that's within the nuclear priesthood, the nuclear establishment, where they have a logic that dictates continually building up and upgrading their nuclear capacities. With that kind of quick overview, why don't I hold my comments for a while and take some of your comments. I could maybe take them in the chat, or maybe if Rudy or Jack wanted to questions.
I'll handle some of these questions in the chat, and then we'll open up for other ones, David.
Yeah.
On this, where do you see this? We've got this new Cold War between us and Russia in building up, and we have this tit for tat reaching out there. Behind the scenes, do you think that our leadership between Biden and Putin can sit down and resolve and begin to back down some of these nuclear issues?
I think they can. As you may have seen, the president proposed a summit meeting with Putin. And we know that there are discussions and cooperative arrangements between the US and Russia on a number of fronts. We're still cooperating, well, let's say coordinating with Russia in Syria in the fight against ISIS. And Russia is cooperating with us in the talks with Afghanistan and also in Iran. So yeah, even though the two sides are competing in a lot of areas, there's also some arena for cooperation. And that needs to proceed and hopefully could spill over into further progress in reducing and eliminating some of these nuclear programs.
On the, you mentioned sanctions earlier, whether that's our sanctions on Russia or Iran and other areas. Other than punishing the citizens of those countries, do sanctions actually do anything?
Well, as some of you may know from my work, I've published several books and studies on sanctions, mostly multilateral UN sanctions. And sanctions can be effective as an instrument of signaling and of reinforcing international norms. But they're most effective as a tool of bargaining and diplomacy, as I mentioned with the Iran deal. These punitive sanctions that we put in place did not really help. They actually deepened the resentment of Iranian leaders. And of course, they had serious social and humanitarian adverse impacts on innocent populations in Iran. But the offer to lift sanctions proved to be very significant and helped to move the process forward towards a diplomatic agreement. So I've studied sanctions a lot. I'm not an advocate for sanctions. They can be effective as a way for the international community to signal disagreement with policies, as they have done with North Korea's nuclear program. North Korea's signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and then is in direct violation of it, has withdrawn from it. And so it's appropriate that they be sanctioned for that. But sanctions that hurt innocent populations, that are designed to create so-called maximum pressure, are counterproductive and they're immoral. It's wrong to punish innocent civilians in a country like North Korea for the policies of a tiny elite militarized regime.
We've got in Rotary, there's a group in here in our club, and many Rotarians that are working against to have a world free of nuclear weapons. Would you be available to perhaps meet with them to give them some guidance?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there are, I mean, I briefly went through some of the big problems, but there are specific policy initiatives underway in Washington by some of our advocacy groups, by members of Congress, the Progressive Caucus in Congress, and so there are several other groupings in Congress. There are steps that are underway that we should try to learn more about and educate the public about them and try to build support for realistic, gradual measures that can be taken to reduce the overall levels of nuclear weapons, and most importantly, not to build new weapons. And we certainly don't need to rebuild all of those hundreds of intercontinental ballistic missiles out in the country of the U.S., out in the West in the country areas, so rural areas. So yeah, I'd be happy to help with that.
That'd be great. That'd be great. I can remember in my childhood, which was 100 years ago, when we'd have the fallout shelters, and also in schools, duck and cover under your desk, and hopefully we don't get back to that. And so we need to work on some of those issues. Do you see the U.S., Russia, and China meeting together to form an alliance to create peace in the world?
Well, we certainly could. I mean, we need to work with Russia and China on the climate change issue. And Secretary Kerry, or Envoy John Kerry, was there in China just recently. And even though we have a lot of disagreements with China, we need to cooperate with the two largest emitters of emissions, the United States and China. If we don't agree on a plan to reduce emissions and try to move towards greater energy efficiency and environmental sustainability, there's no hope for the planet. So it's really a life and death matter for our future generations. And it depends on the cooperation of these two great states. And I think there's a basis for moving forward. The new administration is taking climate change seriously, as it should, and has set targets for low emission vehicles and a number of other programs that could significantly reduce our contribution to global carbon accumulation. And China has also announced policies. So we need to work together with them. Now, Russia as well. And in terms of working towards peace, in my mind, the achieving of global environmental sustainability and global peace are the same. The two processes have to go hand in hand. For example, with all the nuclear weapons programs that are underway and the rebuilding of all of these intercontinental ballistic missiles, $100 billion of advanced technology and talent, scientific talent. What if we use that resource instead for addressing environmental issues and developing clean energy technologies and modernized transportation systems and the like? So we definitely need to work together with both countries on the environmental issue and on the global peace issues. I think, just if I might comment on China in particular, I mean, there's many reasons for the United States to be unhappy with China in terms of its policies, and we certainly don't see their authoritarian communist government as the kind of model we want for the world. We support democracy, freedom, human rights, and their policies towards their own minorities and the nearby countries have been rather aggressive. But we have certainly ways to register our disagreement with China without trying to militarize the competition. And that's part of what's going on in the United States. And one of the reasons why the administration has proposed a further increase in the military budget is because the Navy is proposing a significant increase in American war vessels to be deployed into the West Pacific. And if you follow Navy news, you'll know that there's now regular patrols by our aircraft carrier groups and by other naval ships out in the West Pacific. And it's all a game of trying to show the flag or show our military prowess, sort of to intimidate China, which in my mind is an insane policy. There's no way that we want to get involved in a war with China over there. And China's not going to be intimidated by us. And if anything, it just further encourages the militarization of China itself. China's military has also been growing recently. They've been more assertive, as I mentioned. And the more we try to confront them militarily in their own backyard, the more they're going to respond with building more of their ships and more planes. And they already have a huge army. So to me, it's insane. Why would we want to pick China for waging a new kind of Cold War? And while we're still waging a kind of Cold War with Russia, you know, I'm sure like I did, many of you have studied geopolitics. And one of the basic rules of geopolitics is balancing of power, right? And what we've done is we're making enemies of the two big powers in the world that we need to figure out a way to balance with and cooperate with in some ways. So Russia and China can sort of balance together against us. We ought to be figuring out ways to work with one or the other to balance them. So anyway, to me, it's crazy kind of militarization of our policy that makes no sense. So it's a big agenda to address, but I do think the climate change, as I mentioned, the work towards environmental sustainability is directly linked to creating a more peaceful world and could be the basis for how we build our cooperation.
That's great. Do you see, if we took the lead as U.S. on agreeing no first strike on nuclear weapons, that the major nuclear powers could all agree to the same?
I think so. I mean, China has traditionally had a no first use policy. Russia has gone back and forth. They did have a no use policy for many years. Now they've abandoned it after the fall of the Soviet Union. But I do think it's important for the United States and Russia and China to try to work out a no first use agreement among themselves. And that this then can become the basis for moving towards other forms of cooperation, and certainly at least reducing tensions and enabling the two sides to agree to certain kinds of communications and exchange of information that would reduce tensions, reduce uncertainties, and therefore reduce the risk of some sort of inadvertent nuclear strike. So I think it's really important. As you probably know, with the no first use issue, a lot of it has to do with the so-called nuclear umbrella, the fact that the United States guarantees the security of Japan and South Korea and Germany and some other states under the idea that our nuclear weapons are a deterrent for them as well. Frankly, I think that's a really old-fashioned idea that doesn't really hold as much in today's world. But that thinking remains, and including in the governments of Japan and South Korea and some others. So we'll need to work with our colleagues in those states as well to try to get statements from Japan and South Korea and Germany and some like the Dutch and others that we appreciate the US. We like to have a security arrangement with the US, but we don't need your nuclear weapons, type of arrangement. So.
Right. You had mentioned this forever war, and looking back over the wars that have happened out there, and what I think in the U.S. we used to think about collateral damage, civilian deaths, non-combat deaths in each of our wars. Certainly at a peak in World War II, but even 250,000 or more in this forever war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in that area. How do we bring more focus to civilian deaths, and so we help people understand that, you know, women, children are losing their lives that don't need to be, and we need to stop these wars because we're harming them forever.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think first we have to get the data out for people to understand the numbers. In Afghanistan, as I mentioned, we're still conducting a lot of airstrikes, a lot of them are by drone aircraft, and they are causing civilian casualties. The UN mission to Afghanistan produces, I think they're quarterly or at least biannual reports that identify all the casualties of military and civilians. And so by looking at those numbers, you can see that there have been as many as 3,000 and 4,000 civilians dying in the war in Afghanistan. A little bit less this last year, thankfully. So let's get those numbers out there. And we think that of these wars in, geostrategic terms, but we need to think about them in human terms. People are dying under our bombs. People who don't even know us, who have no quarrel with us, who just happen to be in an area where the Taliban might be having control. So I think people will respond to the human interest story. And one of the things we did in past anti-war campaigns is to try to bring those stories to the American public. Let's get some stories about families in Afghanistan that have suffered because of this, or are still suffering today in Iraq, or in Somalia, or those who have died in other places like in West Africa, where we're fighting a number of different campaigns. So I think that's part of it, to help people see the human cost of war. That's always something that we need to emphasize. Politicians think of it in political and strategic terms, but at the end of the day, it's people's lives that are affected, and innocent people are dying.
Yeah.
So let's get that information out in front of people. Tell stories. Arthur has a TV program. Let's get some of the victims from these wars in Afghanistan to tell their story.
And there's plenty out there that we could figure out how we connect with in this arena. Our youth have been with Greta Thunberg and others taking on the environment issues. Do you see a way for our youth to get involved in the creation of peace in the same way, or anti-war?
Yeah. Well, here at Notre Dame, the students are really mobilized around Black Lives Matter, around the Sunshine Movement, which is the climate change issue, and then immigration issues. And that's been the case for a number of years. And there's a lot of enthusiasm and idealism among the students and wanting to make a difference. And my view is that the most important thing is for young people to be engaged socially, to work on the issues that are most relevant to them now, which, as I mentioned, environmental, Black Lives Matter, and those issues. But really, these justice issues and environmental sustainability issues are also peace issues. And I see the movement as one whole. Yes, there are different emphases within the movement by different groups. But I'm always encouraging the students to be engaged on the issues that are most important to them and help them understand the need for nonviolence. So certainly by teaching nonviolence in social movements and respect for your adversaries and for the arts of negotiation, you can negotiate and demand, or sorry, you can demand defund the police, abolish the police, but then you have to go to the city and negotiate some kind of a reform within the police forces. And that's going on in hundreds of communities right now. I teach these skills to the students. Yeah, chant the slogans, go for your maximum goal, but realize that in policy terms and in reality, you have to negotiate on specific steps. It's an incremental, step-by-step process toward social change. And those kinds of skills, those disciplines, and the commitment to nonviolence are, to me, also the basis for a peace movement. We can't, I think, expect a lot of people to mobilize on like Afghanistan or Iran nuclear deal or these issues. It's not as salient, not as immediately relevant or threatening to their lives as issues of racial equality or environmental sustainability, for example.
Yeah, and Carol, I'll get to you in just a second. On the UN side, do you see the UN being able to take a prominent role in creating peace in the world, or is it so controlled by the Security Council it'll never get there?
Well, it is controlled by the Security Council, sadly, in terms of the structural limitations of the UN. But even within that limitation, I think the UN has a critically important role to play. And I've worked a lot with the UN over the decades. There was a time when the front office people here at South Bend would say, where have you been lately? Well, I've been over at the UN, and I think the front office people there know me better than they do here at the Institute. And so I've seen a lot of the flaws and the bureaucratic nature, the careerism that limits the UN efficiency, and then also the power plays that go on within the UN Security Council. But still, the UN is essential. And it's so interesting that the administration has turned to the UN to create a new mission for a peace process in Afghanistan. That's because the UN really matters. We may not, in the United States, our government may not respect the UN, but around the world, most governments respect the UN as the source of international law. And I know in Europe and in a lot of the Asian states, countries will not commit to an international peace mission unless the United Nations is authorizing it, unless it has been authorized by the Security Council or the General Assembly. So that is a tremendous amount of political authority that the UN has. And it's also the source of international law.
I just can't get over how you've informed us tonight. Your philosophy is just so refreshing. And we don't get to hear this message that often. And have you heard about the treaty to eliminate nuclear weapons, and how is that going?
Yeah, definitely. And I've met with and worked with many of the groups that helped to put together the support for that treaty. And that's a good example of the relevance of the United Nations. Mm-hmm. All of the Security Council members, the nuclear states and others, have said they don't support it and they're not signing up. But we're now at a point where enough nations have signed that it does take effect. It is now officially international law that all states are obligated to take steps to eliminate nuclear weapons. Now, making the treaty in effect doesn't enforce it, and it does take the action of individual states. But it creates a moral and legal authority for our commitment to getting rid of nuclear weapons. And it does also empower civil society movements. You know, the coalition for Nuclear Zero that was sponsoring the treaty negotiations won the Nobel Peace Prize, as you saw. Just
ICANN.
And ICANN, exactly. So I think it's a positive agreement, one of the crucial international law agreements. Remember years ago when the anti-nuclear movement began, it was under the slogan, ban the bomb.
Yeah.
Well, now the World Authority of the United Nations has banned the bomb. We still got a long way to go to get rid of the bomb, but it's a step in the right direction.
It sure makes sense to get rid of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. David, you mentioned about our graduates from our peace centers, and Peggy Aseo is on here representing us as a member of our club from Rotary Foundation side with our peace centers on here. And do you work anywhere closely with our one in the U.S., our Duke UNC?
No, I'm not familiar with that one. No.
Okay, so we've got a peace center there as well as other ones across the world here, of course. And we're opening a new one in Uganda, and we're in the next couple of years we'll have another one open in the Middle East.
Excellent.
And so I would love for you and Peggy maybe to connect here, and maybe there be some good connections there and synergy between your work and our peace centers.
Happy to do that. As I say, I really admire Rotary International. I've worked with a number of your teams around the world, and especially your students.
Yeah, we got 1,400 graduates out there that are focused on creating peace in the world, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Carol has an organization that she started that has youth doing filming on peace. And Carol, a quick question, if you have a quick question for David.
Well, I have an interesting idea, David, because the Peacemaker Corps has been around the UN for 30 years, and I'm an NGO with ECOSOC status and all that. And we always have we have a film festival we do annually, and it's still being watched by 300,000-400,000 people all over the world because it's for kids. And the subject is peace in the streets. And then we have subjects, like we had the 75th anniversary last year, was a big deal. So there was things about that. And then they had the 17 SDGs, which we follow. And I've been at the UN for years. So I was thinking after your talk that maybe this year that we should add a category about getting rid of nuclear weapons. I mean, let's hear from the kids. These videos are under 5 minutes. They're kids under the age of 5. All the way up to 18. We had 48 winners last year. You go on our website. I'll send you the email through the chat and see what we're doing. And I think that we're just about to launch our PR. We always do that in April, and then we'll do it in the summer, and then we'll do it in the fall. And iHeart's our big producer. Why don't we start a category that says something about reduction of nuclear power or something? Give me give me an idea, and I could add it to this year's festival. And let's hear what the kids have to say.
Terrific idea. That's great.
Great, and Rudy will get connected.
Yeah, I'll make sure you get connected there.
Yeah, we're a very big organization. We're all over the world, but this is perfect. This is a new category. We'll give up the 75th and we'll add the nuclear something, whatever you say. Let's hear what the kids have to say about this. Their world.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost at the end of our hour, but David, you have been getting so many compliments in the chat box. We want you to know how much we appreciate your attitude, your spirit. And I loved what you said. All peace treaties work when there's a power sharing agreement. And if we could just keep that in our mind, that we have to share because we have to live on the same planet. We only have one planet. And if we don't get a treaty to eliminate the nuclear weapons, and if we don't get the respect for all humans, as I started this program today, see the world with global eyes and love the world with the global heart, and understand that money can be spent to save people rather than threaten people. Absolutely. And I just loved your attitude tonight. I am your new fan, and I think our whole club has been devoted to eliminating nuclear weapons. And I want to thank you. As president of the Rotary E Club, you're the best. And Rudy, want to end it tonight?
I think this is great. And David, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you, David.
And we look forward to more connections with you and learn how we work together with you on many issues here. So thank you for your efforts out there.
Thank you. It's a privilege to work with you and to be part of your team. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's good. And,
Thanks,
and
David.
if
Great
you're,
job.
are you a Rotarian yet?
I don't know if I am officially. I guess not. You know?
No. So you should be joining our E Club of World Peace.
That's figured out.
So we need to have you as a member of our E Club.
Okay.
We're trying to get to 100 and you'll make us very
yeah,
proud.
You'll be, you hurry up, you'll be number 80. So you're doing well. So
Join us, David. We've been at this for decades and over 50 years. I commend you, and this is a perfect place for you to join.
No pressure, just join.
Yeah, well, yeah, no pressure here. It's all peaceful. So this is a great group to share with. We really enjoyed you sharing tonight, and we're a very open group here, as you can tell from our members here. And we need to learn more from each other so we understand what's going on in the world.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks
a lot.
Stay
Appreciate it.
Shalom, salam from the Middle East.
Stay well. Stay
Bye. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Rudy. Good night, everyone. And thank you for your presentation.
Peggy, you came on late. You dropped off or something.
My Zoom froze.
Your Zoom froze. Okay.
Yeah.
I just was. I asked him about connecting with Duke UNC, and so he, even though he complimented us and had used many of our graduates in a variety of areas, he wasn't aware of that program. So I said we should connect him with all of our peace centers.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And he'd be a good advocate for them.
I'm surprised he didn't, because it's one of the very few programs in the world that offers full funding fellowships